Liverpool have been way too quiet this summer, man. Way too quiet. I've seen quite a lot of people obviously angry. Some of us are annoyed. We're looking at the likes of Arsenal. You're looking at the likes of Spurs, Manchester United, Chelsea. You know, they're all signing players. Teams from abroad, Atletico Madrid, obviously signing a player. PSG look relatively close to getting in Akliouche as well. They're also looking at, of course, Diomande, just like Liverpool was. Liverpool have only got in that one signing, and that is Victor Munoz. Very underwhelming signing, I get it, but they got in a signing at the very least. There is a player who can play across the entire front three, something again that we have asked for. So, and listen, this is kind of like piggybacking off the conversation that Ends and Savage did, earlier on in the day, talking about, Liverpool kind of standing still, and big up to those guys because it was a really, really good conversation. But, not even, but I guess to add on to that, it's just, I think it's one of those, innit? As fans, yeah, we look at things, obviously we're going to look at things differently. Savage has said numerous amount of times in terms of the how fans and the board it doesn't align in any way, shape, or form, right? When it does come to fans, we obviously have this our own expectation, right? We have this expectation of the football team, we have the expectation of the manager, we have an expectation of the players, etc., and that's always going to differ from what the actual expectations are, right? Obviously with Liverpool, and as I've mentioned this a million times, right? Obviously Manchester City, their owners, they do it. They come out at the end of the season or at the beginning of the following season. I can't remember exactly when it is. And they talk about their aims, right? Talk about the previous season and then talk about their aims going forward as to players that they might potentially look to sign. Maybe not actual names, but just in terms of maybe areas, talking about what they're trying to achieve moving forward. Again, I've mentioned this 100 times. I know it's not going to happen, but I'll say it again anyway. It's just more the reassurance that, we're still along this journey. We're still trying to achieve something, whatever that is, obviously contextual to every single club, but we're still trying to achieve, this, that, and the third. Obviously, Liverpool owners don't do that, and that's their prerogative at the end of the day. If you don't want to do that, that's cool. Do fans need it? I would say yes, fans need it. Do they have to do it? No. That's where I'll say it differs, right? You don't have to do it as an owner. It's not in your prerequisite, when you do get the job. I'll make sure every single year, every single summer, you let us know kind of what's going on. You let us know that we're actually along some type of path. But I do think, especially with Liverpool last season, when they had the round table with Arne Slot and all that kind of stuff, right? I actually feel like this is probably the one summer maybe where you probably should have done it, because then you sacked that manager. You spent a long time thinking about, doing a round table, clearly, because I don't think that was just off a whim. I do think that they thought about it. How's it going to look? What are we trying to project in terms of the message and things like that? Cool, you've done it. Now that you've done it, you probably had to stick with the manager. Almost regardless of what actually happens in the season, you almost have to stick with him, because now, regardless of what anyone wants to say, regardless of what anyone wants to think, regardless of what the actual even facts are, there are going to be people who are going to look at you and think, courage of your convictions. You're not really people who stand by the things that you say. And you've proven that, unfortunately, in this case, you're not standing by, what you've said previously. You're not standing by the decisions that you've kind of made. Now, I get it. Obviously, they've got a business to run, they've got a football club to run, and they need to be making sure that they're achieving certain aims and targets. But I mean, when you did that round table, I feel like Liverpool were in the exact same position. When I say position, not literally in terms of the table, but in terms of, yeah, I mean, they may or may not get Champions League, but it's really that in the end, he actually got Champions League football anyway. Now, there might be other factors behind, why they let him go and etc., etc. And I say all of this, right, to say, when we then get to this summer and you've sacked the manager, or he's left, I don't really care, but he's gone, right? The manager's gone now, and Liverpool, obviously, new manager has come in. Obviously, the new manager is going to need time to kind of look at the squad. Obviously, he's definitely looked at the squad prior to coming in and having conversations. Probably told them about a few players that he may think, oh yeah, we got to keep this one here. This is a player I really like, or this is the player I really want to work with, and etc. But there's going to be the majority of the squad that he may not really know too much about in terms of the way that they play, the way that they train, how they are around the training ground, and etc., etc. Right? So there is a level of acceptance that as fans we've already got. I feel anyway, in terms of understanding that. But I do think that in the way, unfortunately, and I know it shouldn't really matter, and I do get that Liverpool maybe don't necessarily operate in that kind of way, but unfortunately other clubs are out there doing business deals now. The summer transfer is still going. It's not about you have to sign 10 players today and, blah, blah, blah. Unfortunately, though, and again, this is just because of what's kind of going on, we're in a position whereby players who are moving clubs are players that, as fans, and again, we don't know what the club necessarily want, because we didn't even know who Victor Munoz was a few months ago, let alone, do you know what I mean? In terms of Liverpool going out and signing him. But unfortunately, players that fans, I guess, would like to see at the football club are now leaving and they're joining other clubs. But also, I think more importantly than the actual players is other clubs are fixing the areas that they need to fix. And some of those areas that they need to fix are the same areas that Liverpool need to fix. Now, if they're fixing those areas with said players, that then leaves would I say, somewhat smaller pool of talent. Now, I don't know what that pool of talent looks like for Liverpool. Again, they keep their cards close to their chest. So for all I know, there are 20 other players who can do the exact same job as some of these players who have left. The Mateus Fernandes, the Sandro Tonali's, the Elliot Andersons, Andre Santos, Bruno Guimaraes. Obviously, we don't know whether he's going to leave or not, but there's obviously other players that Liverpool are going to look at, right? And that's absolutely fine. And that's what I expect for you guys to do. Unfortunately, we're kind of in this, it's like a weird space. Ultimately, I think what's going to necessarily happen is, yes, I do think Liverpool will sign players. I'm probably more being optimistic than anything. I do think Liverpool will sign players, but I do think that, one, it's not going to happen until after the World Cup. I don't know if it's because those players are there or whatever, but I just think it's more about allowing Iraola maybe a couple more weeks until the World Cup is obviously finished to then assess the squad. I don't actually even think it's anything to do with the World Cup in terms of players at the World Cup. I actually just think it's more, let's give him a bit more time, because at least by the time the World Cup is finished, teams obviously away on pre-season, players coming back. So everything is then, okay, we're now back to club football, after that point. This is his period of time to then assess things. So yes, I do think that Liverpool will sign players. It's just, at the moment, because clubs are doing some of these deals during this World Cup for players at the World Cup, but just deals in general, it's then looking like, ooh, are there going to be what type of player, what type of quality? Again, like I mentioned, Liverpool have signed Victor Munoz. Would I say that's a quality signing? No. But add to the depth? Yeah, of course. He adds to the depth of the forward line. Now, what then happens to players like Cody Gakpo, as an example? Does he stay? Does he go? Are you going to push Rio? You want to also sign Bradley Barcola? What does that mean? Yes, I know he can play right wing and all that stuff. Not his best position, but he can obviously play there. Are we doing the shoehorning thing again, where we sign players, play them in a different position, see how that kind of works? Everyone thinks it's going to be like Mane Part 2, and he's just going to be able to seem... I don't know. I'm not saying it can't happen, but again, these are things that you have to, would I say, necessarily look at to then see if more so as a fan, just to kind of look at him, be somewhat optimistic. And I think that's, kind of the key thing when I'm thinking about things, But listen, look, again, I think it just comes down to like the lack of clarity just at this current moment in time when it does come to Liverpool. I think that's where fans are just getting annoyed. You know what I mean? Like, ultimately, we're coming up to, almost the middle of July. Obviously, the World Cup's going to, I think it's one more week, or maybe I think potentially a week and a half or something like that at the time of this video. So obviously fans are going to be like, yo, like, what's kind of going on? When are we going to sign this guy? Or are we looking at this guy? We've inquired about this player. Are we going to sign, said player? But then also the other side of the coin that I always think about is, again, Iraola might assess the squad and he might look at it and think, I don't really need that many players, or I don't need this player, or I don't need that player, or yeah, you know what, I'm good with the numbers. Because ultimately, obviously, we all talk about we need a midfielder. Liverpool got loads of midfielders. Iraola might think, I don't need another midfielder, unless, of course, one of these midfielders decides to go or wants to leave and, things like that. Then, yeah, of course, I'm going to need, another midfielder to obviously come in. But if they all decide that, okay, we'll stay, he's not going to sign another midfielder. Do you get what I mean? Like, then it becomes redundant. Forward line, yes, that will be the one area, right? And this is where, unfortunately, with the lack of quality out there in football in a general sense, and then you got the lack of quality, then you have to take away the ones who are basically unattainable. the Kvaratskhelia, Elise's, Vinicius Juniors, etc., etc. Right? You got to take away those guys. Then you've got to then look at the ones who might be way too expensive. So then you're really looking at, okay, who can I get? But then who can I get for decent type of money? Now, they then tried to obviously get Yan Diomande. Now, he was going to obviously be a massive overpay, but they were willing to obviously do that. Barcola, I feel, is going to be a big overpay as well. Do I think he's better than Diomande? 100%, but he's still going to be an overpay regardless. So then you're having to think, again, how much are we willing to spend this summer? Does it then mean that most players are going to have to then, would I say, stay? So that Liverpool don't need to necessarily go out and have to sign so many more players because we're lacking in depth here and lacking in depth there, and obviously pushing through more youth players, which is never, necessarily a bad thing. But again, Iraola might genuinely look at things coming from Bournemouth, working with this level of player. He may look at things a lot differently to how us fans obviously look at. We've seen these players for years, and I've mentioned this before. We've seen them for years. We've seen what they can do for years. We're not happy with what they can do over the last few years, but that's just us. Iraola's never seen these guys in terms of up close in this kind of fashion and having to analyze them game by game and week by week and stuff like that. He only has to do it twice a season. So for him, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, like on the day, this guy seems pretty great, kind of thing. And obviously he knows about a few players anyway, just from being a manager. And, maybe there were some players he might have been interested in and et cetera, et cetera. But again, he may look at the situation a lot differently than we do. So then we have to take that into account. So do I think it's going to be frustrating summer? Yes. Do I think Liverpool still sign players? Yes. But again, like I said, it's going to be a frustrating one. I don't feel that Liverpool are going to sign. They're not going to sign what they need. I don't think that's going to happen. I think for some weird reason, Liverpool just never, ever seem to actually do that. There's going to be a lot of frustration come the end of the window. But then I think what we're going to get and what we're seeing already is a lot of mouthpieces from reporters. And again, journalists, reporters, they don't always get it right with Liverpool because, again, Liverpool do keep their cards close to their chest. But you're going to start seeing those mouthpieces a lot more as we start, or as we get closer and closer towards the start of the season, because it's going to be, yeah, you know what, he's happy with the squad, this player wants to stay and blah, blah, blah. Curtis Jones, no, he doesn't want to leave. McAllister, no, he doesn't want to leave. Zaboza, like, he may sign a new deal 6 months later. All of these things are obviously inevitably going to change when, just because of just how it is. And then, Isak will pick up an injury at some point in time, and now Liverpool don't have a strike. Like, I can see this. I feel like we've read this book so many times, man. And it's just like, I've read this book. I've watched this TV series so many times. I know when certain lines are going to come up. So I almost feel like that's going to happen. So it is really just about, just kind of preparing yourself. I'll be honest with you, man. It really is just about preparing yourself for what is to come. But again, I would love to be wrong. I would love Liverpool to then bang next week. Boom, 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 boom. This player, that player, this player. Maybe certain players who are still at the World Cup. Maybe if certain teams get knocked out in the next couple of days, then maybe next week we start to see things starting to, ramp up and, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. At the moment, we can only assess what we can actually see. And at the moment, we're not seeing anything. So, yeah, it is frustrating. But let's see. I think we're going to be having a lot more of these kind of conversations over the next couple of weeks anyway, especially with the tournament, ending. So, yeah, as I mentioned, it's going to be very, very interesting. But let me know your thoughts, man. Let me know your thoughts so far on Liverpool's window or lack of window. What is it you guys think we need? What do you think we need? And what do you think Iraola thinks we need? Difficult because how can you get in the mind of someone else? But, yeah, in terms of if you was Iraola, right? Don't come with your bias in terms of you've watched these players, blah, blah, blah. If you was just Iraola, just think for a second, or think that you're going into a club that you don't support, right? But it just happens to be Liverpool. Look at the players that Liverpool currently have. Listen to maybe look at some of the news in terms of players who may potentially want to leave and et cetera, right? Whatever your own expectations are, add that, you can factor that in, right? But think of what are the actual positions you feel massive priority, because either we don't have a player in that position, i.e. right wing, so that's obviously going to be one position, or you think, no, we need someone in that position for X, Y, and Z, whatever it is you think Liverpool can obviously do next season, right? So I'll give you an example, right? Just for myself before we head out of here. For me, if I was Iraola and I was coming in, midfield wouldn't be a priority. I wouldn't look at midfield and think I need. It would be more someone would have to leave first before I think about that, right? So one of the positions obviously is the right wing area. So that's one area that I'd be looking at and thinking, I need a right winger. Who I'd get, I don't really know. I'd get maybe Minteh, for example, just as an example, right? I think, I need a right winger because we don't have one who's an out and out right winger. I love the fact that players can play across the front three, but I do want someone who is maybe a bit more out and out. And then obviously I can then add a Victor Munoz, a Barcola, like I can add someone else, right? Then I'd be looking at the centre back area, as well as much as Liverpool have got Virgil van Dijk and they've got Xhaka, Leone, and if you throw in there Joe Gomez, for me, I'd want more experience there. So I'd look at that position and say, maybe I need to have that centre back just as an experienced centre back. Who I don't really know. Maybe oh god, centre backs are a different one. I would have said Senesi, but that one's out of the picture. I don't know. Just pick a set. Lacroix from Crystal Palace, right? I'll go get someone like him in, and then I know I'm kind of solid in that area. Right wing, I'm sorted in terms of I've got one in. If I would then want to get a backup, then cool, we can deal with that. But just trying to think of that the priority area. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section in regards to who you guys think and Iraola would want to sign come the end or come the beginning of the season. Keep the same energy. Stay blessed. I'll catch you guys real soon.